Good to you.
Well, welcome back. We're continuing our class. This is where we left off, that we're working through the context shifting worksheet. I think the most difficult part of this process is to pick a good situation to work on. I use the term presenting dilemma. It's kind of a term I borrow from medicine where they talk about the word presenting meaning your symptoms. And just to remind everybody, the way this sort of came about was I had built the context shifting worksheet, and then I had clients in the feedback that I got. In fact, maybe we should do the plus delta feedback at the end of these sessions. I never thought about that. Anyway, the big feedback I got, and I do these plus delta cards every night, was we don't want a generic workshop. We don't have time for that. We want one that addresses our specific needs. So a simple answer was to integrate the context shifting worksheet into the workshop, and then you're applying the material as we go to what's bothering them. So that's how this happened. Any comments or questions? We good? Okay. So I have them write these in their notebook. Since I work with usually intact teams, the questions I ask is what keeps the team leader up at night? And then I sometimes use 3x5 cards to solicit comments about this. And what are limiting social contexts of your team? I had a really interesting one where this team that was a very senior safety and mission assurance team, members said we cannot tell our truth without fear of retribution. I was doing this workshop with Ian Sharp from Australia, was doing it with me. It was at JPL. Leader of the team said, "This is nonsense. This doesn't happen." And Ian sort of stepped in and took over the workshop for a moment, which was fine. The people I work with know that I trust them to do this. He said, "Okay, what we're going to do is a silent vote. Everybody close your eyes and keep them tight. Now, without looking, if you've had this experience in work, raise your hand. And then now put your hands down and open your eyes." And we told the team, almost every hand went up. So the team leader still said, "I don't believe this." And so we said, "Okay, take out 3x5 cards and write down examples of when this has happened. Don't put a name, just when this has happened." And Sharpie and I took those, called a break, and analyzed them. And it's very interesting. A lot of them were the greens and yellows responding to the way the blues talked to them. A lot of it had to do with that. And so we talked about that in the workshop. But that's something you could definitely use as a thing. I hear this pretty often. We don't trust each other. These are often teams that have worked together for years. And this is just the human condition, my friends. We cannot communicate with each other. We cannot communicate with customers, particularly when they're angry. And these particular teams, I did a lot of work with safety and mission assurance because the head of safety and mission assurance for NASA, an astronaut, listened to my material. He said, "Terrell, you got it right. It's social context where the risk is." I did tons of work, and these are support organizations, and they have to get their funding from the projects. And so this is an interesting dilemma that they have, and especially if the projects get mad at what they're going to cost. This is a real interesting challenge. These are all candidates for this. We cannot communicate to increase resources. So I probably mentioned this, but early on I had a team where an industry team where the vice president told me he'd want me to come in and help him fire the team leader because he was incompetent. So I did a TDA, and sure enough, the team's in the bottom quintile. And he said, the leader's the problem. So how do you deal with that? You measure the leader. So I did an IDA with the leader, and he was fine. So I brought the team into the room and said, what's going on here? And they said, "Oh, the problem's simple. Our company has a long history of lowballing cost estimates. We're trying to get into a new market with DoD, and we put together a bid that we knew was really low. Then the same VP cut the price in half. So we're trying to do a job with totally insufficient funds. And I said, okay, so here's your choice, fundamentally. Go back and tell the customer the truth, make a 4D request to get more money. And tell them that you can't do it with the money they've got, and their answer was, we might lose the contract if we do that. And I said, yep, and if you don't do that, you might spend the next 4 years getting beat up so badly, you'll never personally recover from it. So, this is another thing to work on. And, I did a lot of, workshops in China. Most of the room was, trainers wanting to learn how to do this. That's why I think this work is much, much bigger. I'm gonna estimate there may be 200,000 people have had 4D work in China. And people came up to me and said things, because I made all the intellectual property free, said things like, I'm the HR director for the largest pharmaceutical company in China, headquarters in Switzerland. And all supervisors have to go through a 4D workshop that my staff provide. So what do I do with groups like that? There is no team. So I got the idea that I cannot motivate or communicate with children. And that's the one I did in the workshops in China, and that worked really well. Lots of energy, and the Chinese are interesting. They're borderline abusive with children sometimes because they're so performance oriented, and they're willing to talk about it. I think that they're candid in a way most Westerners aren't, to talk about how they mistreat their children to public audience. And lots of insights from this. So this is the hard part. And any thoughts about this, about the process to pick the situation? By the way, I had another case where somebody said, I was riding in a car, this was in Xi'an, with a coach, local coach was taking us around to see the Terracotta Warriors, which is a very famous World Heritage Site there. And he said, I want to see if you can do the context shifting worksheet riding in the car. And I said, well, it'd be easier if I wrote something down, but let's give it a go. And he said, we're trying to decide whether to open up a satellite office of our organization in another city or not. And said, okay, so let's start working through that. And after we got into it about 2 or 3 minutes, I said, stop, this is not the right tool for this. The way to do this is to identify the criteria, rank them, put it in a matrix and check out, that's the right way to solve that problem. I'll tell you what I can do. I can tell you how to make that, if you do make that satellite office a reality, I can show you how to make it successful. So that's what we process. So the context shifting worksheet doesn't solve everything. And the best way to find out is just start doing it and see. You'll know after a little bit, get some insight and say, well, this is not a human relational problem. This is really, if you look at these, you can see the common thing here is all about human relationships, telling the truth, trust, communication with themselves, with customers, to get money, communicate with children. Everything here is about some communication thing. And I think the norm in human communications is not. And this is one of our biggest problems. And we just had a whole lot of conversation about politics, and politics is all about forcing your storyline on other people rather than trying to communicate and understand. Thoughts or comments?
No, it's a great review.
That's a great review. I just was wondering, Charlie, if you had any unusual circumstances or something that really was not going along with the scenario, so to speak.
Let's talk this a little more. Here's the method I use to do this, okay, with teams. The first thing we do is we write down troubling situations on a flip chart, and we use what's called nominal group technique, or more colloquially brainstorming, which means you can ask questions to understand what the person is saying, but you can't make any comments about the quality or validity of it. This is what I call cast the net broadly. You can write almost anything on this chart. Then having done that, we take a little break, and I get with myself, my second chair, and the team leader, and we combine similar items. It's the jargon for this is creating affinity groups. And the reason for this is that we're gonna organize things that are essentially the same thing into one group, because we're gonna vote in a minute, and if you don't do this, the votes will split. You follow me? If you have three different comments about the same basic thing and don't combine them, it'll split the vote three ways. So this is a task that I need help with. And we can do that in about 10 minutes, and we can show people on the screen, on the flip chart, just draw lines, and we think combining these two things, this is all done very transparently, people can see this. And then we vote, and I love voting because I found people often not vote for what they argue for. This is really interesting human thing. And you can do it, just let them go up and vote with a marker. Or if there's a lot of emotional tension about this, you can bring little colored circles they can paste on, so you can prevent anyone from cheating. You give everybody. I typically like to do something if there's like 15 items, give everybody 6 votes, something like that. I don't think there's any hard rule on this, so everyone can. And by the way, there's no rules. They can put all 6 votes on one thing if they want. So and then we and I like to count the votes on the side with this little tallying system, so everybody can see how it's going. And people can watch the vote develop. They can see how people are voting, but usually no one cares much about it. They're thinking about how they're going to vote. And then we talk about it and pick something the team feels good about doing as a group collectively. So one thing that will still happen is often someone will be pushing for something that they care about. They'll be saying, we got to work on that one. And I'm realizing that particular one, where it's a valid one, probably only affects a small or less than a majority number of people in the room. So I'm really trying to do 2 things at once. I'm trying to have them learn a process, and I'm trying to have them provide a result, both things equally important. So I won't pick anything that doesn't have pretty much a consensus on it. If we don't have like almost everybody willing to give it a try and can participate. So the problem is that when you pick something that's, of limited scope, other people just don't know how to participate, don't care. So that's kind of one of the tricky points. And then they go and write this in their workbook in a context shifting worksheet. So as we go through this, they're going to fill out the context shifting worksheet, and they're going to leave the workshop with this record of their own writing. And by the way, they're perfectly, if let's just say that the team's going to work on this, I'll participate with the team activities on this, but when I get to my worksheet, I'm in the middle of a divorce. I want to work on my divorce on my worksheet. That's fine. You can do on your own worksheet anything you want, or something else at work. But what you won't get is the benefit of the group's intelligence. So everybody clear? So let me just talk about this again. We come up here, we put no limitations on what can go up here. Everything's allowed. Then we take similar items and combine them. Then we have people vote on what they think they would like to work on or what's most important to them. Then we show the vote on the screen, on the flip chart. And with the team leader's heavy involvement, because sometimes I don't really know the background to this. The team leader might get on his feet and help a conversation to see what is it that we can all agree we're going to work on together. And this is all, I'd say this whole thing may take an hour and a half, something like that, in what would have been a 3-day workshop. But this is the only part of the thing that's kind of difficult, because no one's done this before. The rest of it has more structure to it. So that's the method I like to use, and then they write in their workbook. By the way, this is the process throughout. We do a group thing on the brainstorming, and then people write in their workbook what speaks to them. We're going constantly back and forth between the group's global thinking, freely expressed, and what you care about.
Charlie?
Yeah,
Can I ask a quick question?
yeah.
So it's just about the project life cycle, so to speak. Where do you think should this type of training be introduced at the beginning, in the midterm, in the late in the game, or where can you address that? You talked about this before, but I just want to reemphasize the importance of outcome depending on
Yeah,
where the
it's been a question that the teams ask me quite often, and
yeah.
what I would say is that we have to get far enough along that the people kind of know each other and are kind of familiar with what the team's trying to do. If you do this like the first time they meet, it's not very useful. And they gotta have it might take 3 months, 6 months, you can ask them. But usually, I don't get requests from teams to do anything earlier than about 6 months into it. They sort of got hit. They sort of start to get hitting the unfortunate realities of what they're doing. I think teams go through phases, it's euphoric, maybe they just got a big budget to do something, they want a big contract.
Yeah.
So they're all, and then they start the unfortunate realities start to come in and they start to see they've got a hell of a lot of work to do or maybe some difficult problems. So early, after they get to that point where they've kind of known each other a bit too. So that's what I would say. And I recommend doing this every 2 years, over and over, with the online tools in between. That's the right way to do this.
Yeah.
I actually did an interesting one. I did a team that was very senior managers. And only 1 month later, one of the managers had me do his team. So he was in the workshop with the other people, and then he had one with his team, and he walked up at the end and said, "Charlie, I want to really appreciate all the new material you put in." They looked at me, saw me just staring at him, said, "There was no new material, was there?" "No." I said, "No. In 2 months, there was no new material." So I think to repeat this, and you guys have all commented that, boy, I didn't see that. I didn't remember that. So I've got this down to 2 days. So the biggest change in that was not taking any questions from the floor. I was taking, especially with the Chinese participants, I was wasting a ton of time with these questions from the floor. And the way I resolved that was no more questions from the floor. If you have that kind of question, come up at the break and talk to me about it. And if I think it's something the group would benefit from, we can decide, you or me, either one can explain this question to the group. But most of the time, it's not relevant to what we're doing. And especially if it's going backward, I especially don't like that, to go back to ask a question in the group about what we did yesterday. You can ask me personally that's fine. So this has gotten down to 2 very long days.
Mm-hmm.
And things like picking this situation, that's an hour and a half out of 2 days. That's a lot of time. However, this is really crucial to get this right.
I totally agree with you, Charlie, and I've been there and I've done that in terms of, you probably heard the expression more than anyone, the good news, we got the grant, and then
You're right.
next stage, the bad news, we got the grant.
Yeah, that's right.
So there is a sweet moment when people just realizing when the honeymoon is over and when they realizing what they got themselves into,
That's
just
right.
that's where you go in with this kind of intervention.
I think they've got to run with it a while, Larissa. They might have that. There was a team I worked with that won a $10 billion contract.
Yeah.
And I went in to meet with, this was at TRW where I was going once a month. I
Mm-hmm.
went to meet with them about 2 weeks after they won, and I expected to see, cheers and cookies
Yeah.
and cake.
Yeah.
They're all sweating bullets.
Mm.
I gotta do this thing now. And so, but
Yeah.
I think it's more important to give them like a few months to get to decide who's gonna do what and get to know each other. This is all about, relationships in the end. It
Yeah.
really is, okay?
Yeah.
So And by the way, there's probably kind of like, phases of grief in this. Give them a couple months. I
Yeah.
talked to them about it, but I'd say, they usually aren't even thinking, at that point, they're so busy trying to understand what they've gotten themselves into, they don't even want to talk about having a workshop. They're not interested at that point either.
Mm.
So, you do this in consultation with the team leader. And what's going on?
Yeah, and it's easier when the leader is the perfect for that position, but it's not always the case, unfortunately.
Right, and so if there's any doubt about that, have them do an IDA.
And then what?
Then if they're not suited, so I've done this 3 or 4 times where we're doing the project that's doing very badly. And I
Mm-hmm.
put down the 7 deadly sins in front of the team leader, and number 1 is, you're the problem.
Mm.
And I said, are you the problem? And believe it or not, they would talk to me. I never had this kind of conversation with anybody when I was a NASA manager, because I had power to do things.
Yeah.
I'm just their friend, basically. I'd have no authority here. And they'd say, it might be me. How can I find out? And I'd measure them, and they got a lousy score.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, what's going on here? And typically they would say, I got this job because I'm really good technically.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't actually like working with people.
Yeah.
And I'd say, okay, so let me go with you to the management. Let's have an honest conversation about this, because you have no choice. You're gonna fail in the final analysis, and I
Yeah.
can just talk straight to people that way and they can hear it. So, and they said, yeah, I agree. So go talk with the management, with me, with them, and say, here's what we have to do. This was a bad fit. We gotta get this person back in the technical track job, out of this management job. And we
Yeah.
gotta do this in a way that they save face and keep their salary and status and all that. And the management nodding their head, they get it, because it could be them, right? So we find someone who wants to do a project management job, and the mood changes the project in like a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
it's about
being,
addressing unfortunate realities. It's just,
yeah.
it's,
Yeah, no, I've seen it both sort of from both different sides when I was working in technical field myself. It's a common thing, quite frankly,
yeah,
when the high technical talent engineer approach to be a project manager or lead on
yeah,
certain
that's right,
assignments, and they don't have those type of skills.
that's right.
They excellent in what they do in as engineers, but they lack social skills and leadership skills and all of that. But at the same time, quite frankly, I've seen the other way around, when instead of really putting a talented engineer in charge, there was an outside person who was hired and who never dealt with any never managed the technical teams before. That failed too. So that person had a, I don't know, MBA. That's in excellent credentials as an MBA, but managing technical skills required certain nuances to be aware of, and to really to, I don't know, what's your take on that? I
Would you say they might have to be 4-dimensional?
yeah, they might be four-dimensional. That absolutely.
So, if you look at so when I formed this company and picked these sort of 8 people as the best leaders that I ever knew, and they all came on board, what color you think they all were?
Green.
Green. And why would that be? Because it's about the people. And all of them had technical backgrounds, because you don't get management jobs in NASA, with very few
Yeah.
exceptions, without a technical background. So I'll show you later, the guy they picked for to manage the first moon landing was a yellow.
Oh, he was a yellow?
A yellow.
Mm.
Gene Kranz's a yellow.
Interesting.
And why would they pick? Because you are forced by the nature of the organization to master the technical side. They've all got advanced degrees in engineering or physics. So they had to master that. But the people on the emotional side had that capacity already naturally there. So you need both cylinders firing.
Yeah, that's right. But being 100% green and working in the technical field, I always was, I don't know, hearing suggestions to orange up a little bit, so to speak.
You're not
So
100% green. You're inclined toward green.
I'm inclined to, okay.
If you were only green, you couldn't put on your socks in the morning.
All right. I'm still managing that task
I
very
work
well.
with people that are so green they couldn't organize anything, and that's not you, Larissa. You
That's not
don't
me.
get a PhD in petroleum engineering by doing green. It doesn't check the boxes.
Yeah, that's right.
And Gene Kranz was a fighter pilot before he was mission control.
Mm.
Did you say he was Apollo 13 or 11?
Say again?
Well, he was Apollo 13. Was he also Apollo 11? Gene
I'm talking
Kranz.
about the guy, he was on Apollo 13 is what you're thinking about. He was the flight director. But he also had a master's degree in engineering. He was,
Oh.
there's nobody who gets those jobs with one exception that I know of, which is kind of a weird one. That doesn't have a good technical background. You don't move up. Another thing that mostly NASA almost exclusively hires from within, and part of the reason is we can't match the aerospace salaries of the top people. So, and these are people coming through the ranks, kind of like I did, as a working engineer to start off, and then physicist, and you go up a technical track, and then you show some capacity there, then you can move over into the managerial side.
He was the guy that said failure is not an option.
No, actually, he never said it.
Ah,
They wrote a book about him and claimed he said it. No,
right.
I back up. They made a movie about him and they put it in the movie. And after it was in the movie, he wrote a book about what happened, and he named the book "Failure is Not an Option," but he didn't say it.
Yeah.
Okay.
He made it up he could have said it, but he didn't. But he's known for something he never said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you always show that amazing video clip about him during your
Yeah,
training. I loved it.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay, thank you, Charlie.
so this is the example I'm going to use throughout for two reasons. One is it was a very powerful experience. The second, it's been long enough ago that nobody minds me talking about this. And what happened was the guy who was in charge of proposal operations actually used to work for me at NASA. And he got the job at TRW because I encouraged them to hire him. He's very, very good. And they got this proposal for James Webb Space Telescope, which I think everybody's kind of familiar with now that it's finished. And he calls me one day and said, we're going to make our final presentation to the customer tomorrow, and I think 4D could help. Would you be willing to do a phone call with us? This Zoom wasn't popular back then. I said, sure. So I expected my friend and 2 or 3 people on the phone. It was actually about 15, 20 people who I didn't know, had never heard of 4D before. Just I'm there with the phone. As I realized this, I said, get out a piece of paper and make a context shifting worksheet from scratch. Write down this word situation and tell me the situation you're in. And somebody in the group spoke up. I'm not sure who it was because I couldn't see their faces, didn't know they were. We're in a competition for a $1 billion contract, must win, and are losing. What does must win mean? Must win means that the CEO has told the stockholders, we're going to win this. So value the stock that way. That's basically how that works, or some version of that. So management's told them, you've got to win. So now the question is, what outcomes do you want? And how to get to the situation I've already talked about a lot. Everybody get how we do that, right? So now the outcomes, what I like to do is keep poking away, because the first thing people write usually is too limited. So what they said is, we want to win. And I said, is that all? You just want to win? Don't you want a good contract? Don't you want a rewarding work experience? Don't you want a fair profit for your company? Don't you want sane lives with work-life balance? They said, oh yeah, we want all those things. So I don't mind asking leading questions to them to help them along, especially if I've only got an hour and a half to do this. I don't have time to do it like a coach would and just kind of push them till they come up with it. I'm willing to ask leading questions to move it along and then check with them. So they all said, yes, that's exactly what we want, all those things. So now we're gonna look, put the group work with the people on the team I'm working with. What are outcomes you're deeply committed to realizing? And it's the same process. We do the nominal group technique. People in the room speak things. Someone might not like it. I shut that off. All things are welcome. Because in the end, you're gonna decide for yourself what you care about and write it in your workbook. It doesn't even have to be on the chart. It can be something else, but this is our process: expansion and then selection, over and over. Clear how we're doing this? So give them time, they write their workbook. I don't know what they're writing, nobody knows. And they could be working on something that the group's not even working on. I don't care, it's okay. What I do care about is that everyone participates in this part of the exercise. That's what's really important. We get the whole room involved. So now we go back to the material, and we're gonna look at this idea of mindsets. This is a really fascinating thing, because I think most people will say mindset matters or attitude matters. But as far as I know, I'll talk more about this, nobody trains it, they don't know how. And what the 4D system does is analysis. And this is the primary methodology, probably overdone in science and most thinking in the world. That is to separate something into compartmentalize into a smaller thing so you can understand this. This analyzes mindset into emotions that you're experiencing and expressing, and storylines that you're generating and expressing. So let everybody clear on this point. Marissa's thinking.
No, I'm clear. Thank you.
Nico's thinking.
Yeah, I can just say, looking at this, obviously we are all influenced by this over a couple of years now, and the kind of thinking, and how much of this, I've applied, and then not always even realizing how it's connected to what we've been discussing over the period of times. Just getting everybody involved, the process, that's more important than actually what they're writing on the flip chart.
Yeah, exactly.
The statement you just made, and I just think about the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, exciting.
So this idea of this is of course AMBR is what we're talking about here. And the idea of managing this mindset, that's what sets up the action. Without this step, the action never occurs. So now we're going to take a look at emotions. And this term emotional intelligence, there's many definitions for it. This is the one that I like: the ability to understand, accept, and manage your and others' emotions. This is the whole essence of what's called EQ, which is very distinct from IQ. And I find an awful lot of technical people run a storyline, emotions are bad. In fact, I've had people actually tell me there's no emotions in our workplace, we check them at the door. And I can relate to this. As a young physicist, I aspired to be Mr. Spock. You know who Mr. Spock is? So emotions are not good or bad. but they're there. They're reality. Unfortunate reality is they're there and they're powerful. And you got to learn how to make them work for you rather than against you. That's the essence of this work. The word comes from the Latin verb movere, to move. So Peter Drucker, your job as leader is to take charge of your energy and help them orchestrate, then help orchestrate the energy of others. I say your job is to take charge of your emotions and help them to orchestrate the emotions of others. This is the lever. So what we're trying to do over and over is come down to minimalist, actionable things that you can name and deal with. Your energy is kind of, to me, kind of a elusive term. So there's 5 emotion groups: glad, mad, sad, scared, and love. There's actually a fifth, that's a 6th, surprise, but I don't deal with it. I'm always trying to make things clear and simpler. I don't think it's that important in this whole set. So ask people, have you felt them all at work? And I'm kind of playing with you a little bit to show love like this, because there've been a lot of romantic dalliances at work. I'm kind of making a little joke about that. Express them all at work. This is a really important, potent little quote. They may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's true.
I share that storyline. So the emotions are the source of human energy. I want you to choose to be accountable for expressing emotions that energize social context and behavior to express the emotion situations require. So glad group, what's it good for? Well, it enlivens people. We like to be around happy people. We talk a lot about Kamala Harris. What she's doing is she's bringing glad group to these meetings of these people. She's bringing humor, laughter, everybody's happy. This creates energy. And it also has another thing we'll talk about later. It motivates people to give you what you want. Because when you make a request in the presence of glad group, people don't want to spoil the mood. So this is a very powerful and useful thing. And this, I think, can change this US election in ways nothing else can. This ability to bring glad group into the room. Thoughts, comments? Mad uniquely energizes and motivates people, especially when you combine it with caring. So the whole Trump campaign is about one thing: mad group, isn't it? It's all anger. The US is broken. I hate Harris. So this is really the political contest: glad group versus mad group. In the end, which one's going to win? Then there's sad group. And sad group is very powerful to move through losses. I don't know anything else that is as useful to move through losses as letting yourself feel the sadness. That's why we have funerals, to help close out death, to mourn the losses collectively. And surprisingly, it enhances creativity. And I'm not sure what the mechanism is for this, but I think that basically you slow the brain down. This is kind of a natural drug to make everything go slower and lets your mind have more freedom to create. Then there's scared group, and that's a lot like mad group. It can motivate action, especially if it's grounded in reality. So that's scared, and that's the other thing that Trump's trying to use. Then finally, there's love group, which is essential to everything. This is the essence of the human condition, is to express love. And I think you see that in the Harris. So we're going to have an emotional contest here between love and glad versus mad and scared. Because that's how I would frame it. And remind people over and over, the workshop to change other people's down the hall. So let's have, let's do a real quick plus delta. What worked for you today and what could be better next time? Larissa, you want to start?
Yeah, what worked well for me, I always appreciate repeating your workshops, and I would do it many times over, regardless of the timing, and I really appreciate the opportunity. But I was especially grateful for really talking with you about where in the life cycle of the project or initiative it would be more useful to bring this up. So because I've been there and done that many times, and I'm in fact involved in something like this now. So which gives me a special sort of ways of rethinking how it should be done and why it's so beneficial. So that's
Anything we should change for the next session?
I wouldn't change anything. I would maybe, if possible, I would ask you to really talk about your successes and your stories, but as well as something that didn't work for you in your practice.
Okay. Not,
Thank you.
Pluses for me, I had completely forgotten about how much work I still need to do on the emotions and the mindsets. So I'm glad we're getting back to that, which leads to my delta, which is I haven't been as prepared for these sessions as I'd like to be. So I'm gonna try to recommit to spending a little more time, particularly like reviewing our sessions. There's always little spots in my notes where I'm like, go back to that. And I just lately have not had the time to do that. So that's my delta. I think as far as the group goes, it would be great if we could figure out some sort of problem to do the context shifting worksheet together. I don't really have any good ideas, and I'm not sure how much time we'd want to spend trying to figure that out. I mean, it's kind of the balance between just getting through the material so that we can continue to utilize it. But if there was some sort of problem that we could work on, my fear is that it's, it would be like solving world hunger.
We don't, if we were in the room together and could brainstorm it together, it'd be a lot better. You
Right.
know?
Right.
Nico, plus delta?
Yeah, it's a lot of things going through my mind. And I just want to keep it short because I'm actually overwhelmed by what I've experienced. The power of emotions, and as you know, I traveled a lot, but that without a word, that brought the message how important these individuals are for me. And that made them to be, that energized them, and how much effort they've put in to just organize and bring new
So
people in.
what I'm asking is about our process of the presentation. Any plus or delta with that?
Um, no, yeah, I'm completely happy. As I've said, it's
Okay,
like stimulating so many thoughts and emotions.
good.
So I just need to put it together, and I've got like a perfect problem statement, already for myself, in order how to create this platform for many people to run around. When
Good.
you impact and affect a lot of people, you can't do it yourself. So I personally need to move to another level.
Rinka, you want to say anything? I think I'm reading your notes. You want to speak up? Or I got your comments and the notes. That's good.
She might be struggling with technology, so she said it in her
Our
text.
connection is bad. Yeah, it's funny. 3 little notes popping up kind of mysteriously. Thank you all. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Charlie.
Dr. Pellerin.
Thank you all.
Well,
Okay, bye.
You all, bye-bye.
Bye.